Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of RecruitMilitary Live, a continuing series of live broadcasts covering all things military transition, veteran employment, mil spouse employment, and much, much more. My name is Lucas Conley, retired U.S. Army officer and former TAP program manager, here today to share with you the ins and outs of making the move to the civilian world of employment. If you're in search of meaningful employment, well, you're in the right place. Please visit rmvets/live to learn more. Okay, let's roll. We all know transitioning to civilian life after years of military service has its unique challenges, but oftentimes we forget that for many, the transition is a team sport. If you have a spouse and children, their life is changing as well, and sometimes just as drastically as for the service member. Today's topic is transitioning together, a soft couple's transition to civilian life. And we have two very special guests from the Navy Special Operations community who will share with us their experience and their insights. He served 22 years in the U.S. Special Operations community as a special warfare combatant crewman. With a master's in organizational leadership and a graduate of the Honor Foundation's virtual program, he enjoys public speaking, high-level planning, executive relationship building, and much more. He's currently the COO of DI Precision and resides in San Diego, California, with his wife and 4 children. Now, she has been a part of the Navy Special Warfare Spouses community since about 2005. She founded and led several military spouse-focused groups centered on connectivity and relationship building. Her career history in marketing, sales, and customer service allows her to use her skills and education further to serve the military community in an impactful way. She's also currently the Director of Impact at the Honor Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Jesse and Jason Hunt to the show.
Hi, Lucas. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Lucas.
Hey, great to have you on the show. You know, we point out quite often that this is a team sport, and I've had the pleasure of hosting mil spouses to the show. I've had the pleasure of hosting 20-plus year veterans of the Special Operations community, but never both the spouse and the both partners on the same show at the same time. So I have a feeling this is going to be interesting.
Hopefully in a good way.
Yes, absolutely. All right, folks out there in internet land, now that you know who we are, we'd like to hear who you are. Who are you with? Who are you serving with? Where have you been? What have you done? Are you coming to us from active duty, from National Guard Reserve status? Have you already transitioned? Are you a veteran or a mil spouse or something else we haven't thought of? We'd like to hear from you. We'd also like to hear your questions, comments, and concerns, and time allowing, we'll get after them. All right, folks, we are, as they say, wheels up. Jason, thanks for being here. You know, as I'm sure you know, transition services and transition assistance programs, they roll out just a ton of good advice on the very functional aspects of a transition from the military to civilian life. Financial planning, resumes, interview preparation, things to look for when you relocate, and so forth. But I think many would say that precious little time is being spent on discussing the psychological and emotional elements of transition, which many would argue is the most challenging part. Jesse, would you agree?
I would, and I will also say that the DoD and the VA are aware of that gap. They're aware that that is missing from current programming. But how do they change that, and what do they do? They're working that out right now, and they're leaving it up to a lot of the VOSs, like the Honor Foundation, to kind of fill that gap. And one of the biggest game changers in our programming, which is a 12-week program, which is pretty long for a transition support program, the first 4 weeks focuses solely on the service member. The service member gets to be a part of themselves and not just part of a team anymore. And they get to dive into who they are. And that can open up a lot of emotional processes. And in that will kind of create that pathway for their own transition once they kind of deal with some of that emotional processes.
Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. And transitioning out of the military, you'll talk to a lot of service members that are getting out. And I think, you know, in the past, maybe more than now, everyone would say, yeah, it's no big deal. I got it. I'm sure no worries. Transition's going to be easy. But I believe that, you know, it's okay to recognize that it is going to be hard, that it is psychologically impactful on the service member when they transition out. And honestly, that's like the first step. If you recognize that it is difficult, I think that's the first step into to finding and seeking help. And that's not a bad thing. And that stigma is becoming less and less in the military now. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think many, especially folks that have been in very senior positions or held high levels of responsibility, find themselves struck with trying to kind of wrap their head around their new identity. I mean, they're no longer chief or colonel or captain or what have you. They're just Jay. And people may have listened to the captain or the master chief, the sergeant major, but Jay's just Jay. I mean, can you think of ways, Jason, that your first experiences with redefining yourself?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Yeah, you don't realize when you're in, because you're told a lot that, hey, you're the only person that can do this. We really need you. We need you to go on this, deployment. You're the next, you're the only individual. And I'm not discounting the importance of our positions that we're in the military at all, but it is a flush and fill organization. There is always somebody that can fill that gap for you. And when you get out of the military and you realize that you're just another face, you're just another cog in this big wheel, it can be a little disheartening. You thought that it was that your transition was, or that your job was so very important, but you realize that it's kind of not as important, but it'll help you transition, I think, by recognizing that, what you did was important, but now that you're getting out, you might need to seek help if you're struggling with dealing with that identity issue.
Makes sense. Jess, do you have those kind of conversations with some of the more senior folks you work with?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when you mentioned that, what does it look like for somebody who's very senior to go through, TAP, or to go through some of the transition programs that encompass everybody from, somebody who's being separated at 2 years and they've, served 30 plus. It can be a huge difference of material and curriculum and feelings, and transition has to be somewhat individualized to everybody. To Jason's point, like you have an identity and you have to go through a process to remember your old identity, but it's now changed into something new. So yeah, it's completely different when you have people of all different ages, experiences, and identity issues are not coming through, for sure.
Yeah, I think I like to joke with some folks. My first experience with bringing myself down from a position of higher prestige to just being an average person is my first job, my first post-military career. I remember being in the office and looking at the trash can and thinking to myself, that trash can is overflowing. Somebody's got to take that trash out. I guess I'd better take the trash out. And
that's my job now.
I guess I have to take the trash out now. Okay, let's bring it down to earth. Now, some describe leaving the military as leaving behind everything they've known for years, even for decades. They describe that the right side of that DD-14, that after, can be a lonely place devoid of connection and camaraderie. It's arguably a much different dynamic in the civilian workplace than it is in perhaps a team environment where you work, sleep, eat, breathe, deploy, fight together. What do you tell transitioning service members who are potentially sliding into that trap of feeling isolated and getting caught up in negativity?
I'll lead with that one.
Go ahead, hon.
Yeah. Well, here I think it's important, at the Honor Foundation, is that we definitely recognize that. And so it happens. It's common. You're not the only person going through it. How do you change the trajectory of that, though? Is you build up the protective factors in your life that keep you safe. They keep you from going even deeper. Those would be seeking help. If you're having some mental health issues. The beauty of COVID is it gave everyone in the military access to virtual behavioral health services, which we struggled with for years. Most everybody on here probably recognizes that TRICARE was behind in everything. COVID got us back up to par with being able to have a reduction of barriers to access to behavioral health. And I think that's huge. Also, build your tribe, get involved with a transition support group. That's a protective barrier, your community, your network. And then realizing that transition has no timeline. It's not, the end of service date, the date that you separate. Now you're on the other side. Now you're transition. No, it's a process. Might be 6 months for Jason, but 6 years for somebody else because they just have to dig through a lot of stuff. And that's a really far timeline. But I just recently met somebody who said that her husband is just now kind of coming out of that transition fog for about 3 years. And he didn't do a lot of the pre-work and didn't do a lot of the self-care right after because he wanted to just have it be easy, or he thought it would be. And so it's just building those protective factors to make sure you don't go deeper and to get you back out. But it's pretty normal. They're not alone.
Jason, did you experience that at all?
Oh, well, without a doubt. Yeah, it was building, and Jesse touched on it, like building that tribe and having that network when you transition out. You might feel like you're somewhat alone. However, I don't know the numbers. I'm sure Jesse can tell me right now, but there's a certain number, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, that transition out of the military every year. And so that is a tribe right there in and of itself. THF is the tribe that I sought out to help me for my transition because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't have all the answers, even though I might have said it a couple times, like, "Oh yeah, I got it figured out." If I'm being truly honest, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do getting out. And so what the Honor Foundation does is it helps you find that network. So even if they're not the perfect network, they're in a network of transitioning services that they actually provide you with the answer, like, "Oh, this is perfect for you." There's a Skill Bridge program that's perfect for you. Oh, it's not part of the Skill Bridge DoD network. Well, guess what? There's a fellowship where you can work with getting a memorandum of understanding and work with this company while you're still in. Like, these are all the things that no one person can be expected to know all of this. So what you have to do is you have to broaden your network when you're transitioning out and start asking questions and talking to people, and you're eventually going to find what you need.
Yeah, and I think, when I talk to some service members, I remind them, for the better part of 20 years, perhaps for those more senior folks, your entire network it has been the military. And if you've ever lived at an isolated installation, you live somewhere like Fort Irwin, which is literally in the middle of a desert, everyone you know, everyone you talk to, everyone that you interact with, from the young man who's boxing up your groceries to the person who lives next door, the person at the gas station, everybody's military. And all your entire network is military. Your chaplain's in uniform. The CDC is mil spouses, So when you get out, you're more or less having to replace every contact, every piece of your network, every pillar of your life with something new. So that networking thing is pretty key. Jesse, would you say it's easier for the spouse or more challenging to find that tribe?
Jason will probably agree with this, but when we started the process of transition, I definitely thought I was an expert in transition, and I was going to tell him exactly how it was going to go, and he was going to have all these feelings. And it was okay. And I had been given, when I started at the Honor Foundation, this instant tribe of transition supporters, coaches, other spouses, alumni, just everybody around me was supportive of transition. It's going to be hard. It'll get through. But it was not easy even for me. It wasn't easy for Jason. So I guess in our situation, I think I had a little bit of a leg up because I had all of this built-in tribe support. For the general male spouse, especially ones that are in isolated areas like you just talked about, it's going to be just as hard on her as it is for him because they're both going to put on their I'm strong. I'm going to do the big, I'll be the strong, but they're probably breaking down inside for a lot of them. No, transition isn't hard for every couple, for every person, but I'd say for the majority, it is. And they keep it all inside because they don't want to show the other person that they're worried, or that they, are we going to have a salary, or are we going to have healthcare, or, all the different things that might come up. So for us, I felt like it was easier on me. Hindsight, probably not so much.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, anybody who thinks that transition is easy is probably definitely underestimating the impact of the life-changing event that's about to occur. Treat it like a mission. I've heard said many times. Treat it like an operation. Have a plan, and then be prepared to shift when that plan doesn't work. Does that make sense to you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, the advice that I give to a lot of people that are transitioning out is, I being from the Naval Special Warfare community, you don't just show up and get the job. There's some research that you have to do beforehand. There's for SEALs, they read books on what Hell Week's going to be like. They do training programs. For SWIC, it's similar. For SF, the same thing. You didn't just show up. It's an all volunteer community, and you have to pass a litany of tests, both physical and mental, throughout the process. So you have to train for that. And in that training, it's research. And I liken it to THF. Like, you go to the Honor Foundation and you start training for your next career. You figure out they start you off with a nice, progressive, because you don't know what you want to do. Oh, well, not all of us anyways know what we want to do. So it says, hey, this is the first time where you get to decide, what do you want to do? And then once you figure that out, they help you target what it is you want to do and train for that. Train for your resume building, train for your interviews, train for what you have to, who you have to network with, what's the best way to get these jobs. And if you need more education, they just show you the way, and it's great. You have to do a lot of the work, but it's nothing that you didn't do before you came into the military and tried out for this special forces position, so don't just expect it to be a handout. Expect it to work. It's a full-time job. Treat it like a mission, like you said, Lucas.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned something interesting there, and it's, what do you want to do? For the first time, you're at the wheel. The Navy isn't telling you, hey, you're going to San Diego now. Hey, you're going to Florida next. Hey, you're going to school next. Hey, you've got professional development. Hey, you're going to go to this school and that school. All of a sudden, the clear path is now just fog. Jess, is that a conversation? Do you sit down at the dinner table and say, hey, what do we want? Where do we want to be? I mean, how does that conversation start?
Yeah, it was really interesting with Jason, because I knew, having worked here, that, it was very typical for transitioning service members to want to go and do contract work or go do a GS job or something like that. And Jason was very adamant from day one, I don't want to do that. Yet I was. But this is all the stuff, guess what? You're a master at small boats. Don't you want to work for the Coast Guard? That would feel safe. I think you should go work for the Coast Guard. And I was, even though I knew I shouldn't be doing that, I was so scared about his process because he didn't know yet. He didn't know. He's like, I want to do consulting. I want to do this. I want to do that. But I wasn't listening to my own advice and our own programming and trying to put him in this niche of what he'd just done for 20 years because that felt safe to me. So watching his progress or his process, same process that all the fellows go through in our program, and I hear them all do it. He finally came to something on his own, and it had to be on his own. He had to use all of the stuff that he was learning about himself and the things that he didn't want to do. I think one of the things he said, he didn't want to work with kids in the nursing homes. I don't remember what it was. Hospital, sick people. He was like, I'm going to eliminate some things. He's like, I'm just not comfortable there. I'm going to eliminate some things. And just part of his process was starting to just eliminate. And that's kind of different, right? You don't just be like, I just don't want to do that. I want to do this. I want to be a teacher. I want to do these things. So it was fascinating to go through it ourselves. And he can, I was trying to push him.
Yeah, she was sending me job applications for, merchant marines and being on the water. And I'm like, what is going on? I've told her, years beforehand, I don't want to do anything on the water. Like the military has a way, and everybody knows it, like making something very cool, not as fun because it's
Yes.
an occupation. Like camping, I'm sure was really exciting for people before they joined the Army, and they spent, months in the woods, so, and riding small high-speed boats is really fun, except when you have to do it in 10-foot seas and in the middle of the night for 12 hours straight. So I didn't want to do anything on the water. And Jessie was very adamant on, she was, I could see that was her nervousness coming out, saying like, oh, what's going on with transition? Like, we got to get Jason a job, and pushing that my way. And so I understood it, and we communicated, and I told her, I'm like, hey, I don't want to do anything on the water, so please stop sending me those.
He wouldn't even open them after a while. Yeah.
And I think what people find, generally speaking, is staying within that same thing. Say, going from SWCC to small boat operations, the Coast Guard, or a sheriff's department, perhaps. Some would say that that really just delays the transition process because you haven't really gotten out of the world that you're leaving. And so you could be down the line at 45 or even 50 years old, now trying to make a career. You've really just delayed your transition. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
I would jump in there because I think, there are people who still have those passions. And so they're not, it's not like they have to rip off the Band-Aid. They're like, those are their passions. They still really want to do it. And if that's your passion and you know that, then go straight into it. Do it. Like, working GS has always been something that you want to do. Go do it. Jason's definitely wasn't a passion, right? So it would have been this slow rip of a Band-Aid. He would have gone to another job, and, we would have gotten comfortable. So it is exactly like that. If that's not your passion, don't seek it.
Yeah, I'll caveat on that. Like, there are plenty of people that are told that they have to, get out of the military at 30 years. You're told you have to leave, and you can't keep doing it. So, and I think in my cohort in THF, there was a couple individuals that did not want to get out of the military. They wanted to continue to do that job. So for them, there's options for that. There's contract work. There's a lot of GS positions that are in line with that. And one of the great things about THF is they have connect networks with those institutions as well. So it's perfect.
One of our guests here, a very short and sweet comment: loss of purpose. Being in the military, obviously, higher purpose, right? The sense of serving something greater than self, a nation, your brothers and sisters in arms. When it comes to that purpose, when you suddenly realize that higher purpose is gone, Jason, how do you redefine what it is why you're doing the things you do in your life?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, yeah, your loss of purpose, because you have dedicated your life to this service and you're recognized in so many ways, which is great. It's amazing. Our military is taken care of very well. And you're told, thank you for your service from people as you're walking through the airport, your first aboard. There's great things like that. I think you can find your purpose in the civilian sector. It might not seem as rewarding, but if you're in service, that's what you want to do, you can still join organizations that service the civilian population, and there's nonprofits out there. I think you just have to redefine it. You really do. Find out what interests you, what you really enjoy doing, and target that. And I'm not just always just going back to THF, but they do identify like what it is. What is your purpose? If you really like service to others, if you love public speaking, if you what defines you, if you love teaching, that then becomes your new purpose. And I find right now that I really like leading individuals. And now being in the position I'm at, my redefined purpose is I have a family in this organization at Dye Precision that I now am responsible for. And that's my new purpose. And it's pretty important because there's 70 employees out there that rely on me. And so I think it might seem like you're going to lose everything, and now you're just another face out there, but it's about how you redefine that, and I think you can find it.
Awesome. Jess, last question of the show, and I'll go to both of you. Assuming you've got some audience time with some folks, spouses getting ready to start their transition process, what advice do you give?
Start it early. Start it well in advance of separation. If you know that you might be looking at separation a year out, 2 years out, start getting involved, researching it, looking at programs, connecting with other people who have done it. It's never too early to explore it, even if you get the orders of your dream and it all changes, right? Like, you don't have to go through the process of preparing yourself and then it's just your roadblock. And I think the fears and the anxieties, they can cloud the excitement of what's to come. Right? It is should be one of the most exciting times in your career and life. And all of the anxiety and fear just kind of pushes that down. So if you start early, it can come up, you can experience some of that. And in the couple realm, like, I think that there's something to be said for being strong for your spouse, but remember that you're stronger together. So open up, talk about it. It's scary. Jason and I had a lot of deep heart-to-hearts where we both shared some of our deep fears. And I think it made us much stronger going forward instead of putting on I'm going to be strong. We're going to go through this. It'll be fine. Hash it out. Lay it all out.
Yeah, and I love the way you kind of highlight this, that comment there in the middle. You said, this is not just the end, but maybe an opportunity to go be successful at something else. This is not end of mission. This is change of mission. Jason, what advice do you offer up to those men and women, those transitioning couples that are headed for the right side of the DD-214?
Yeah. Well, Jesse said it too. Start early. If you start early, you can better prepare yourself. Whether it's getting that education or early on and taking advantage of the programs that the military provides through tuition assistance and also skill bridge, all these things. Educate yourself early. Start going through and researching what it is, all the programs that are out there that can provide you assistance as you go through it. Like I said before, no one person that you talk to is going to have all the answers. So talk to as many people as you can. And then also, Jesse said it, communicate with your spouse, your significant other. And if you're having issues and you can't communicate with them, it's always important to start, seek advice from professionals as well. I'll be honest with you. I did speak with a professional when I was transitioning out, just because some things I didn't feel like I was going to get the same results in speaking with my wife, which isn't a negative thing or anything on our relationship. Just that I think you're being honest with yourself when you're saying, like, hey, maybe I should speak to somebody. So it's not a bad thing. The stigma is dead with that. I see senior leaders that are seeking advice all the time. And the military is more open to that, and they've recognized that isn't something that sidelines you anymore, that actually it's showing your resilience to handling and coping with stress, not just bottling it up until all of a sudden you explode. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Start early. Start figuring out what it is you want to do. Communicate with as many people as you can. And I think that's the best advice I can give people.
Awesome. As we begin to wind down the show, Jess, if somebody from the special operations community wants to get started, get their transition off on the right foot, how can they reach out to you and the Honor Foundation?
Yeah, they can go to our website, www.honor.org, and they can kind of look at videos, read testimonials, see a big layout of what our program looks like. It's a beautiful website, easy to navigate. And then if they have one-on-one questions that they might want answered, or just go to somebody directly, feel free to reach out to me. It's Jessica@honor.org. I'm always happy to chat with people.
Awesome. Fantastic. Jason, Jess, thanks for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Hopefully some of the insights you've provided have helped some of the folks in our audience today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And for those of you who haven't already done so, if you're looking for a great job after you get out of the military, go to www.recruitmilitary.com. That's www.recruitmilitary.com. There you'll find over 400,000 job opportunities from more than 16,000 employers around the world and around the corner. Recruit Military is on a mission to help veterans, transitioning service members, and mil spouses find meaningful employment. And folks, if you like this week's show, you're going to love next week's show. Tune in where next week when we do a deep dive on how to build a winning LinkedIn profile before you transition. Definitely not one you're going to want to miss. Until then, this has been Lucas Conley for Recruit Military Live. Good luck and Godspeed.